Alright, what's going on, guys? It's time to get into a new deck. We're getting into standard, and okay, look. Before we get into this, I feel like there needs to be a bit of a disclaimer. This is a janky deck. It is a very, very janky deck. It is extremely janky. Let's just get that out of the way. It's clunky, it's slow, it's prone to dying very quickly to aggro decks. It's just a little bit janky, but I've been having a lot of fun with it. So we're gonna try it. I think it's good enough for the tournament practice room. I guess it depends what we get matched up against, but I think we can go 5 games and steal some wins with it. And when this deck goes off, it's kind of funny. So the deck's called Combustible Colossus, and I think this illustrates how janky it is because it's built around Combustible Gearhulk and Metalwork Colossus. So yeah, just look at those mana costs. I think that yeah, you get an idea of what's going on here. It's very expensive or super clunky, but it's kind of funny. So Combustible Gearhulk is a 6 mana 6/6 with first strike. When it enters the battlefield, our opponent basically has a choice between allowing us to draw 3 cards, which is fantastic. A 6 mana 6/6 that lets us draw cards. Kind of cool. Alternatively, they can put the top 3 cards of our library into our graveyard, and they take damage equal to the converted mana cost of those cards. And then you look at Metalwork Colossus and you realize we have the potential to deal 11 damage with 1 card, potentially. I mean, it'll never happen, but technically we could potentially deal 33 damage. That'll never happen, but it's kind of interesting. But you see what we're trying to do here is that we're looking to play a Combustible Gearhulk, make our opponent either, give us 3 cards, that's fine with me, or just risk insta-death by going off the top of the library and potentially taking dozens of damage. I mean, it's kind of crazy. And I know what you might be thinking, like, that's not a very good win condition. I mean, only 3 cards. You have a chance to do a bunch of damage, but you might not. Well, we're going to skew the odds in our favor just a little bit more by playing Panharmonicon. Yeah, see, I told you it was clunky. I told you it was clunky. I told you it was janky. Panharmonicon is pretty janky. It's pretty clunky and awkward. It's a 4 mana artifact that doesn't do anything when it comes into play. But man, it's just fun when we have a Panharmonicon in play and we play Combustible Gearhulk. So if you're not familiar with this card, it's one of my favorite cards from Kaladesh. Might be one of my favorite cards of all time. It's my, it's like the budget version of Doubling Season, I guess. But it's a 4 mana artifact. Whenever an artifact or a creature enters the battlefield that causes an ability to trigger, we get to double that trigger. Which means that when we play Combustible Gearhulk, we get either 6 cards or our opponent is basically just going to die. I mean, I don't think they're going to take 6 cards off the top of the library and not die because we're going to be playing a lot more of just a bunch of big, clunky, expensive stuff. So yeah, they're probably just going to die if they decide to take 6 cards off the top of the library and take a bunch of damage. Alternatively, they'll let us draw 6 cards, which is crazy. I mean, we're refilling our entire hand. And then typically when we do that, we're just going to be able to just flat out play Metalwork Colossus fairly easily because there's a lot of cheap artifacts that let us draw cards and we can potentially make them free. And we're going to be doubling that card draw with Panharmonicon. So basically if we have Panharmonicon and we play Combustible Gearhulk, one of 2 things is going to happen. They're going to rip off the top of the library, take 1 million damage and just die. Or they're going to give us a handful of stuff that's going to trigger Panharmonicon, and we're just going to just, kind of combo off in a sense, and probably play at least 1, maybe 2 or 3 Metalwork Colossuses. Totally possible, kind of funny. So next up, just a couple creatures that has some synergy with Panharmonicon. We're going to be playing Filigree Familiar. This is fantastic for this deck, because this deck really just wants to stall out until turn 6 or so. So Filigree Familiar, it comes into play, we gain 2 life. If we have a Panharmonicon, we gain 4 life. We can just throw it in front of anything, and then we draw deeper into our deck, so we can find a Panharmonicon, we can find a Combustible Gearhulk. It's just fantastic for this deck. It's not going to do a whole lot in terms of killing our opponent. It's purely a stalling tactic, but it's really, really good at stalling the game. It lets us push the game for another turn or 2, and that's really what we want to do. We really want to just not die for a turn or 2, and Filigree Familiar can get us there. We're also going to be playing 3 Noxious Gearhulks. These are so fun with Panharmonicon. It's just infinitely satisfying to play one of these, kill off 2 creatures, gain a bunch of life. Again, it's another stalling tactic, but it also can, if we have a couple Panharmonicons into play, this is just crazy. I mean, we can practically wipe the board with this sometimes. gain a ton of life, and then we've got a 5-power menace creature in play. Yeah, pretty cool. I really like Noxious Gearhulk with Panharmonicon. I'm a fan. Next up, this is kind of our, just basically draw our entire deck package. We have 4 each of Foundry Inspector, Prophetic Prism, and Puzzle Knot, Metal Spinner's Puzzle Knot. The idea here is that with Foundry Inspector, the Prism and the Puzzle Knot become, basically 1 mana, draw a card. But then if we have a Panharmonicon, 1 mana, play Prophetic Prism, draw 2 cards, maybe we hit another Prism, maybe we hit a Puzzle Knot, we play that, we draw 2 more cards. It basically just lets us draw through our deck, and that's if we just have 1 Foundry Inspector. We're drawing so many cards that more often than not, it's very easy to have 2 Foundry Inspectors, and then we're just basically drawing 2 cards for free every single time we hit a Prism or a Puzzle Knot. And then, basically the idea is that, with Combustible Gearhulk, if we draw into cards, if our opponent says, alright, you just draw 6 cards instead, we're going to draw into stuff like this, and then we're just going to start flooding those into play. We're going to be drawing a million cards, and then we're going to be, we're going to have a handful of Metalwork Colossus, which just so happens to be free because we just played so many artifacts. Foundry Inspector also just lets us get our stuff out faster. It lets us, it's not uncommon to have turn 3 Foundry Inspector into like a turn 4, a 3 mana Panharmonicon followed by a 1 mana Prophetic Prism, draw 2 cards, stuff like that. It just lets things come out quicker. And, with this amount of card draw, along with, just making everything cheaper, you can get a Combustible Gearhulk out really fast. You can get Noxious Gearhulk out really fast. But the real point of this is to just get these Prisms and Puzzle Knots to be basically free. And, just start churning through our deck so we can get a Colossus out really quick. Next up, this is our Please Don't Die, Let Us Survive Until Turn 6 package. We have Unlicensed Disintegration, fantastic card. Destroy any creature. And then if we have an artifact, which, we definitely will, we deal 3 damage to our opponent. So, hey, that's a nice bonus as well. We also have Cut to Ribbons. Cut deals 4 damage to a creature. Again, just looking to survive. Ribbons is kind of cool though because, we can pay X and 2 to make an opponent lose X life. It's just nice to have sitting in our graveyard. This is a mid-range clunky deck. So we do, we're looking to have 6, 7, 8 mana. So it can be actually a game finisher too. It just kind of sits in the graveyard all game and all of a sudden you're like, oh hey, I can deal 8 damage right now. That's it's kind of fantastic. But mostly we're just looking to kill a creature, survive, just survive. That's the idea, is just to survive. This isn't very many cards. We only have 6 cards here, but our sideboard is filled with removal. Basically, our first game, we're just looking to kind of combo off, see what our opponent's playing. If they are playing something aggro, if they're playing Ramunap Red, if they're playing, just any kind of creature-based aggro deck, we're just going to bring in a bunch of control and just try to live. Alternatively, if they're playing a control deck or something, we can actually pull these out and make the deck a little bit more aggressive, so totally possible. So a quick look at the mana base here. This one is way more complex than what I usually do. Because I build budget decks, it's usually just a pile of basics. It's kind of necessary. But because we are in mostly artifacts, we get to play with all kinds of colorless lands that are kind of fun. I am playing 2 Dragon Skull Summits because I bought those before they were reprinted when they were like 30 cents, when they were like 0.3 tickets. Now I think they're closer to 1 ticket each. So this does kind of bring the price up a bit. But, it's disappointing. I wish I would have bought play sets of all of those before they went to standard because now they're a little bit pricey for the next couple years. But I'm playing 2 Dragon Skull Summits. You can replace those with any, budget dual land if you don't want to spend that. But what we do want is 2 Inventor's Fair and 2 Sequestered Stash. These are really cool. Inventor's Fair, we get to gain a life every turn, pretty much guaranteed. We can also sacrifice it to search our library for an artifact. So we can find that Panharmonicon, we can find that Combustible Gearhulk, which is an artifact if you didn't notice. It's red, but it is an artifact. We can find a Noxious Gearhulk if we're, on the verge of death and we really need to kill stuff. So it's just really useful. Only 2 because it is legendary and that can cause problems, but Sequestered Stash is a nice, kind of replacement for the other 2. It does something very similar. We can sacrifice that to put the top 5 cards of our library into our graveyard, and then we can put any artifact from there on top of our library. So not quite as good, but remember, we don't actually have to hit the artifact that we want with the cards that we put in our graveyard. If we just have an artifact sitting in our graveyard already that we want, we can still just activate Sequestered Stash and get that. So it's nice. It's a nice way to bring back, something that's died, something that our opponent has killed. I'm also going to be playing 3 Unknown Shores just for color fixing. Technically, we're mostly in artifacts, but that it doesn't hurt to play Unknown Shores. It taps for colorless, which is all we really need, but it also, lets us, play a Combustible Gearhulk or a Noxious Gearhulk, or, maybe we can fix our mana for an Unlicensed Disintegration. So we don't need colors, but, this does kind of let us filter into a color we need. Also keep in mind, by the way, that we do have those Prophetic Prisms, which also let us filter our mana, and we usually have at least a couple of those out, so that's fine too. Also going to be playing Field of Ruin. This is just nice to, basically color screw a 3-color or more deck. Also nice because there are lots of legendary lands with Ixalan, which are very powerful once they get flipped. So yeah, that's definitely useful to have. It doesn't hurt again because we're in colorless. Also going to be playing 10 mountains and 3 swamps, which sounds like a weird ratio. Mostly, I just want the mountains pretty much every single time. I always want to play Combustible Gearhulk. Technically, we don't need a ton of colored mana at all. But, I really, really, really want mountains every single time. So that's why I'm playing so many more mountains and swamps. So really quick, looking at the sideboard here, we have 2 magma sprays and 2 lightning strikes. This is so we can shift into more control if we need to, if our opponent's playing aggro. If we're playing against Ramonap Red, we just want to bring in more burn, kill stuff, try to survive. By Force, fantastic. It's kind of just like an auto sideboard inclusion in any red deck ever. Destroy X artifacts, kind of fantastic. Also have a Yaheni's Expertise. This is a board wipe. There's a lot of board wipes. Unfortunately, they're all a little bit pricey, and I was getting close to the top of the budget with this deck. I think we're at like 8 tickets. I really don't like to go past 10. I will every once in a while, but generally speaking, 10 or less is what I try to hit. And I think we're at the high 8+ tickets. So we have 1 Yaheni's Expertise. You have more of those. Those would be good in the sideboard. We just want to be able to wipe the board against, again, aggro decks. Aggro decks are a big problem. Anyway, we can just, wipe it out. Wipe everything out on the board is a good thing. Also, 3 Crook of Condemnation. This is just because, mostly for God Pharaoh's Gifts, which has become significantly less popular. I haven't seen it very much. Almost debated taking this out entirely just because I don't see it that often, but I also know that as soon as I take it out, then I'll get matched up against it, of course. So we're just going to leave it in. It's fine. Also have 3 Scrap Heap Scroungers. This is so we can go into aggro against control decks, particularly with the blue-black control deck. Scrap Heap Scrounger is just really good against that. It soaks up a lot of removal and keeps coming back. Also gets us 3 power out on turn 2, which is fantastic when they aren't playing creatures. So yeah, just something that we can shift into. If we need to shift into something more aggressive, this deck is actually perfectly fine with that. So that's it, guys. Yeah, it's a little bit clunky. Yeah. I've been playing this for a while, actually. I actually built a Rakdos Panharmonicon deck that wasn't necessarily this. It was more built around Reckless Fireweaver. It was more of a combo deck. But that deck was just obnoxious because Reckless Fireweaver would just get killed and then the deck wouldn't work. And the great thing with this is that we draw so many cards once we get going. Like, this thing's like a steam engine, right? It's it's really slow. It's really clunky. But if we can just get to turn 6, this thing just, it gets going. And then it's like a freight train and, good luck stopping it. If I resolve a Combustible Gearhulk, if I get that in play, bad things are going to happen. Really, really bad things are going to start happening. That's the general idea. This deck is explosive if it can just get past turn 6. If we can't get there, then we just can't get there. And that's why it's clunky. That's why it's janky. But it's fun. It's going to be a fun. It's going to be like a 5 turns of just survival. Just survive. Don't die. For the love of God, please don't die. And then if we can get past that, then, it gets kind of crazy. So that's going to be the idea here. And if you're interested in seeing this deck played, I'm going to be playing 5 games with it in the tournament practice room. So if you want to see those games, as always, check the description. There should be a playlist. And I will see you in the first match.